Thank you, Ibrahima, and I'm going to pass straight over to our final speaker, Faith Nkala, who is the National Director of CAMFED in Zimbabwe. And for those of you who don't know CAMFED, it's the Campaign for Female Education. But that's all I'm going to say because I know Faith is going to tell you more about it. So we'll just do a quick changeover. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, wow. I was looking at the time, but in the next 10 minutes, I'll quickly walk you through what CAMFED is, what we do, and what impact we have seen. Most probably as a model, which is working out and very practical and speaks to all the issues really which have been raised this morning. So CAMFED, as Laura said, is Campaign for Female Education. It's an international NGO which focuses on the education of the most marginalized children in Africa and the empowerment of young women to grow up as agents of change in their own right and in their communities. I know Leslie kept on saying that we need to be able to do something now. So this model will give you a glimpse of what we are doing right now. CAMFED focuses on education of the most marginalized as the entry point and for wider opportunities to be opened, and which includes health as well. I know Leslie talked about 8,000 days. We focus on that. We just don't look at now, but we look at beyond the education as well. And we know that within sub-Saharan Africa, the impact of such an initiative of creating education opportunities is so transformative. 25 years ago, CAMFED supported me to go through school, and here I am today, being the National Director for CAMFED. So the impact is quite evident, and it cannot be missed. I'll not dwell on this so much. Ellen in the morning spoke about the impact of education on children widely. And I know Laura also just now spoke to the same. And there are some few infographics as well, which speaks to the impact of education, especially on the most marginalized children, on their earnings, on their health, on their children, on their families, and even the support they can be able to provide to generations to come. As a model, CAMFED looks at girls' education as an entry point. And I think we cannot emphasize on this because earlier speakers spoke about the importance of gender in all this. And once critical masses of girls are sent through school and they access education, they retain, they complete, and they are successful, they become empowered young women who can be the leaders of change in their communities. And as a result, you see the wider systemic change. So for us, it's about systemic change. It's about improved and healthier communities and countries as a result of education. In terms of scale of our operation, we work with 5 countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and obviously Ghana up there. To date, more than 2.6 million girls and boys have been directly supported to go through school, and widely, in collaboration with communities, more than 5 million children. And more than anything else is the impact of education on young people, is the emergence of young women who are leaders, the CAMA, the alumni network, who are now at the forefront of educating the next generation. I know in the morning, Brad was talking about the excitement of communities being in the forefront, who is determining the priorities. And in CAMFED, it's these young women who are now in the forefront of prioritizing because they've gone through the system. They've gone through the process themselves, and they know where the loopholes are, so they then come in to address what needs to be addressed. In my knowledge, I'm not aware of any other network which is like this in Africa. We are activists for education, especially for girls in our own right. And not because we have read about it, but because we've experienced it and we know where the gaps are. So right now we are leading in the implementation and designing of programs and ensuring that this is not just done by development partners alone, but that we work jointly with our governments, with our local communities, with other children, with other peers to make it better for the next generation. And the health, life skills, delivery, which has been talked about in the morning, we are in the forefront of that, ensuring that the methods and whatever information is delivered is information which will address the real issues for children in school and for young people. I think it was Leslie who talked about rural economies. It's critical for us because we understand there is need for sustainability. As much as we can get help from the governments, from development partners, young people themselves, they also need to be able to be sustainable, create opportunities and come up with ways to have resources on the table to help the next generation in school. In 2014, CAMFED pledged to help 1 million girls in secondary education. So this is from the transition point when they are entering secondary school, 13-year-olds. And in Zimbabwe, that's when we lose most of the girls. And this is true for many other Southern African countries as well. And by end of 2017, 80% of those children have already been supported. And if you look at the infographic, this is because of the other young women who have been going through school. They are now supporting the next generation together with their communities. And obviously, CAMFED continues to offer bursaries to complement the efforts of the communities and the young women who are at the forefront now of educating the next generation. In terms of our strategies, most probably that's the question you might be having, how do you do it? We ensure there are adequate resources to create educational opportunities for the most marginalized children. Yes, through support which can come from partners like CAMFED, but also collaborating meaningfully and engaging communities meaningfully to also contribute to that education. And we ensure that the people who are in the forefront are people who understand the local problems so that they come up with local solutions. So this is our karma, unleashing their new potential. And for us is also working with the governments. I know from Senegal, they were talking about the resources, they were talking about capacity. And for us, we are saying there is an opportunity to take up working models and ensure that the government can be able to scale that up and work together as partners. I know in the morning there was also the issue of how do we capitalize on already existing systems and structures? And definitely, that is the best way to go, and it works. There is an example of a parent support group in Tanzania, which is complementing the wider strategies within a school of child-friendly schools, as well as the sector plans for that country. This is happening across our 5 countries with thousands of parent support groups. So in there, they are leading in the management of a homegrown school feeding initiative. Yes, with some support from the government and the schools, but also the parents playing a very critical and active role for sustainability. And looking at the wider school infrastructure, as well as the wash facilities. I know that's also a very big issue. And within the work of parents, that is something they also prioritize. In that picture, that's a KAMA member, Fiona Mavinga, one of my colleagues. She was supported through school by CAMFED as well, and right now a qualified lawyer, and she's leading in the development, growth, and strategies by young women Kama to ensure that the next generation is safe and grows up in a more safer environment than the one which we grew up in. And the next one is a local meeting by what we call the Community Development Committee. We work hand in hand with them to ensure that whatever new solutions and innovations comes through at community level, they trickle up to influence the policies widely, so that the issues which are emerging can be prioritized by the governments. Talking about the impact now, I wouldn't want to repeat most of the issues which have been done, but maybe to give you solid evidence that what we have really seen is that happier children perform better in school. And happier children, because there is adequate support from parents, they are being fed, or happier children because they are being supported by other existing structures. And for us, it's what we're calling the Learner Guide program. These are young women, the Kama members, who are going back to their local schools and offer a tailored curriculum to meet the exact needs of children in terms of life skills, in terms of health, and even the whole learning process to improve the learning outcomes as well. And this is being led by excited young women who feel they need to just make the life better for their brothers and sisters who are coming after them. And as a result of that, we have seen a huge improvement in the maths and English tests and marks of students in the partner schools which we are working with. And not just that, those children who were at the danger of being left behind and had dropped out of school, being brought back to school by these young women, and ensuring that their needs are met and that they are retained in school and they perform well and better. This slide speaks to the statistics which were shared in the morning, but in Camfed we have experienced this practically, where the researches which have been done for young women, we've been supported through school, there was clear evidence of delayed marriage, delayed childbearing, but also the use of their education, going back to their communities and their peers to deliver information which is essential and hence transforming their communities and their schools. And as a result, for us, we have seen that this definitely breaks the cycle of poverty in the end. And this vicious cycle which we continue to see, and clear evidence as well of the linkage between the education and the health, that once the girls, the young women are educated, the effects cannot be missed. Everything actually totally changes. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about the social and psychological benefits as well for education. Looking at the girls and boys we support in school, because their needs, their material needs and psychosocial support is provided for them, you can see that there is reduced stress and higher self-esteem for them. And the existence of the Kama through the Learner Guide program continues to offer that social and psychological skills which they so much desire. And you see that also the assurance that there is a network for them, there is a platform for them which can link them to opportunities, to financing after school, makes a huge difference on them as well. In that picture is Talent Tokoda. She's from Zimbabwe, and she's a medical doctor. Practically, in Camfed and Kama, we have got young women who are pursuing the health professions, who are nurses, who are social workers, who are teachers, now supporting the next generation of children for better education and for better health. And as an organization, and I think as most of you today who are here, we believe that education and health together, we can be able to make an impact. Thank you.
Faith, I'm going to ask you for your reaction to this, but I also was going to ask you to reflect a little bit on the demographic dimension to this, is because you're from Zimbabwe, where 60% of the population is below 25, and almost 40% of them are 14 or under. So do you think this is the right investment approach for Zimbabwe, for yourself, given the specific needs of a young population?
Thank you, Laura. Definitely, the population we are referring to is the population which we work with as CAMFED. And maybe changing the rules of the game a little bit, I would add the access to education. Because for community engagement to fully function and work, there is need for an entry point. And for us, we've seen that it works when we get the children in school and then you start working with the communities. It unlocks a whole lot of all other opportunities, which then the infrastructure as well can be taken care of because you're working with the communities to ensure that a safe and secure environment is created for the children. So definitely I agree with community engagement, but with access there, with some investment to ensure that children, first of all and right now, are in school. And then we pick up the rest.
Faith, I'm going to ask you to respond actually to this one, because investing in nutrition at school, how does it help your girls? And also the boys, but how does it help the girls? And do you think it should be a priority?
I do agree, because investing in nutrition, I think there is a very direct link, which I think a lot of people have noticed. Happier children, better learning outcomes. And I think even with the girls and boys we have supported, we have seen this. Actually, from our program, we have realized that a lot of school feeding has been only in primary schools. But now we have realized that even in secondary schools, especially in the most affected areas with drought, it's important, especially at exam period, because we're realizing that exam papers can be so difficult, 2 hours of thinking, and a child hasn't eaten. And we have seen that in schools where we have implemented school feeding in secondary schools for the exam classes, the learning outcomes have quite improved. So I totally agree with this. But I think for me, the major issue and the major question is sustainability. I know we're talking about governments should do this for us, and the donors should do this for us. But I think it's about every stakeholder who should be doing what. And I think the concept of homegrown school feeding and whole school approach comes into play, ensuring that all critical elements within a community and a school, they are also contributing to the sustainability of this. And for us in CAMFED, we've seen that local mothers contributing food to feed children during exam period has become more sustainable than most probably expecting a portion from the government to come and feed secondary school students. And in Zimbabwe, the school feeding is mainly in primary schools, but the need will be greatest at that particular time in a secondary school. So I think it's about innovative ways of solving the immediate challenges and problems at that particular time. But definitely nutrition is critical.